All right, I'm here with Christian Griffith. Christian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me a little bit today, man.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here.
So, man, there's so much I want to talk to you about. We know each other a little bit through ultra running. We have a lot of mutual friends, and I had to look the other day. We've been friends on Facebook since 2011. But let me start off by telling the people listening to this some of the things that you've done in the past, because the list of the crazy shit that you've done is staggering. Let me just start. Okay. You've done over 100 ultramarathons. That's any run that's longer than a marathon, 50K and up. You've done 20 really, probably more at this point, 20 tough obstacle course races. You were on American Warrior Ninja. You've done the world's toughest mudder in under 24 hours, which is a hell of an accomplishment. You ran 3,190 miles across the country as a fundraiser. We'll talk about that. I want to hear more about that. You're the oldest participant in the selection. And that I really want to get into, because I just, before this interview, I watched the whole series again. And
cool.
I'm telling you something, that is some of the most inspirational TV I have ever seen in my life. And man, you really inspired me on that one. The list goes on and on and on about basically testing yourself with incredibly tough physical and mental challenges. So what I'm curious about, when did you start pushing yourself in this manner? What was your when did you dip your toe into this world of experimenting of what you were capable of?
I would have to say around 2006. I'm a technology guy, and I had embarked on a project with a company called Encore Tickets in Atlanta, Georgia. And it really was traditional. If you know what ticket scalping is, that's what everyone, the nice name for it is the secondary ticket market. But this was very early on, way pre-StubHub. And it was really just a ticket broker company that I was working with that was interested in moving online. As an online guy myself, when I saw that this company wasn't selling tickets online yet and was still using telephones and referral networks, I saw an opportunity to help them grow. And really spent like a 5-year from 2000 really to 2008 of just an aggressive growth in this area. And we grew this company to $40 million. And in that time period, though, I was doing a lot of sitting. A lot of sitting. And as someone who grew up surfing and playing and, athletics at school, sponsored amateur skateboarder as a kid, it was very odd for me to be sitting. And, I had moved to Atlanta from the beach, and that was the first time I'd ever lived away from the beach. And, just all of those things combined created a 250-pound dude, workaholic dude, right? And I can't exactly remember why I wanted to do it, but a 5K race came up. And I think it was somebody that I worked with asked me if I wanted to go do it. And I'm like, wow, 3.1 miles, that seems like a really long way to run, at the time, and being such a big dude. But I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try. And I did. And it was very slow, it was over 30 minutes. But I got it done. And I don't know, I got this bite, like I got this super buzz after it. And being the kind of person I am, which is pretty much applicable to all areas of my life, I tend to take something like small or introductory, and then I got to have it all, right? I'm an all or nothing guy. Like, I can't be a drinker because I'll drink all the booze. You give me drugs, I'll do all the drugs. You give me sex, I want to do all the sex. Right? Like,
Yeah.
So, I'm an addict, I guess. And, all this did was just a healthy form of addiction. And I started going longer, right? I started doing 5K, then 10K, and half marathon. And I did my first marathon, the Atlanta Marathon in 2007, where I think it took me 5 hours and 35 minutes. They were taking down the scaffolding as I was coming through the finish line. And the only people there was my wife and stepson. Just yay! I came trotting through. So, that's really how I got started. Is that I wanted to get healthier. I didn't like having labored breathing sitting behind a computer. Saw a picture of myself once where I'm leaned back in a chair. My belly's like up like this, dude. And I'm like, typing away, right? And that's really where it all started.
God, I can sympathize. I'm constantly amazed at the continuity that I have with the guests for the same path that I was on. I'm not going to bore everybody that has already heard this, but I went through exactly the same transition at a little bit earlier time. I had started a business. I was behind a computer all the time. My business also was online, and I was getting out of shape. I had always been active as a kid, and I decided I didn't have any time to do anything, but maybe I could go run around my neighborhood, which was a 1 mile loop. And I suffered. And I also did it in the dark because I didn't want anybody to see me. I think it's just a commonality. When you start running, you think you look like the stupidest person. I mean, I wasn't a runner. I was plodding along, just trying to, and I couldn't run a mile without stopping. And then I followed the same path. I ran, I think my first race was a half marathon and just went up from there. It was the same kind of thing. I wanted to get healthy and try to balance out. I could recognize that my body did not like not exercising. That's interesting. Yeah. So, okay. So you run a marathon, you take 5 hours, and regardless of how long it took, it was still a good buzz, wasn't it? You're like, that. It's an accomplishment. Your first marathon is an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, we're friends now, but, I had read Dean Karnassus's book, Ultramarathon Man.
So had I. I was inspired.
And I read it. I was going to an industry event in the ticketing world. I was going to an industry event, and this is back when bookstores still existed, and we had a Borders Books next to us. And I walked over there, and like, I need something for the plane. And I remember picking up this book, and it talked about somebody running 100 miles. And at the time, I'm like, there's no fucking way, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's a long way. Like, how does anyone run? So I read it cover to cover. The industry event was in Vegas. I flew from Atlanta to Vegas. I read the book cover to cover on that flight. And, when I got off that flight, I'm like, I'm going to do one of these ultra marathons.
The soiling of the Lexus was my favorite story in that book.
The 50 miler. Yeah, the American River. He did the American River 50. Yeah.
And he gets done, sits in his car, and throws up all over the interior of a Lexus. That book for me was the same thing. I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
I knew I had to do it.
And the old timers hate to hear that from me. Like, they're like, because they don't like Dean. Old timers don't like Dean because he's a self-promoter. But
look at how many people he got into doing the sport.
Oh, dude, I love him.
Or
so
inspired.
You're preaching to the choir. Yeah. I think the old school likes to play or hate a little bit too. They don't like to see change.
And honestly, that scene has changed a lot since those days. I mean, back then fast forward to once you've completed a 50 or 100 especially, you want to tell everybody you meet because people have that reaction like, you what? You ran 100 miles? How many days did it take? You're like, no, man, I started at 4 a.m. and finished it at, 5, 6 o'clock the next day, ran through the night. But nowadays we hear Runner's World puts stories about 100-mile runners all the time. It's a much, it went through a huge growth spurt, 100-mile races. But it sure does not take anything away from anybody that's accomplished it. I don't care how much in shape you're in, 100-mile race destroys you. It is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now you're seeing that with the 200s. They seem to be the new 100-miler.
Have you done any? I know you've run a lot longer than that. We'll talk about that. But have you done any of the 200s, the Tahoe or Bigfoot or any of those?
No, they haven't really. 100 just destroys me. I can't imagine doing 2 of them back to back. And with with the way I am with ultra, it would be really slow. I'm so slow after 70 miles that like the second 100 would just be, I don't know that I necessarily want to do that to myself. If I would have to really train for it, like really train. Like it'd have to be like maybe my annual focus. And I can't imagine, I've been out for 2 years. So, and I can't wait to talk about that because I'm just now back and it's amazing how fast it's coming. But
It's great.
I would need, those have kind of popped up while I was injured between my finish of running across the country and now. So in this previous 2 years, that's really when the 200s have really started to grow. So I haven't really had a chance even to consider it. But right now, it's not really in my wheelhouse. I'm thinking, I'm considering myself more now as a journey runner. I want to just go to as many cool places as I possibly can and do runs, unique and interesting runs, maybe once or twice. And I'm not as drawn to the marquee events as I once was.
Yeah. I tried the very first Tahoe 200 and I failed pretty spectacularly. And I've tried twice since. And I got a bone to pick, but I haven't been running long distance either, but it never gets out of your head. I
Yeah,
think
no, never.
and I want to do 100 again too, because it's literally the hardest thing I've ever done. It was even harder than 200s because 200s, the pace is a lot slower. You typically have like say 100 hours to finish it. But in 100, you have 30 hours. And depending on how difficult the course is, it sounds like a lot of time, but it's not. You can't, you've got to keep moving and you got to take care. I don't know. It's a trip. It really is. So what was your progression from that marathon to start? Like how soon did you do an ultra? How quick did you move up to a 50K next?
I did. Let's see, I finished the marathon in 2000, I want to say 2006. I'm pretty sure it was 2006 actually. In December of 2006. By February of 2007, I did the Black Warrior 50K. That was my first 50K. It was called the Black Warrior 50K in Alabama. Well known as being a good first timer 50K. Didn't do horrible. Came at like 7:15. For being my first, was it felt good. I met a lot of the ultra old school, including oh my God, I can't believe I'm trying to one of my
That always happens when the camera.
Dwayne Satterfield, who unfortunately has recently passed. I don't know if you know that, but a popular, he's very popular in the Southeast. And I met him and he was a huge inspiration to me. I remember looking at him and being like, my God, that guy looks like a mountain goat, like just the way he was built and how thick his legs, how strong he was. And, I just felt like a big doughboy out there. And he gave me a ton of encouragement and really was responsible for me getting more interested in it. I don't know if you, Chris and Randy Wharton, they were also at that race and they're race directors and they really pumped me up and got me excited. And yeah, no, I had a great time. Then, I had joined the Ultra List at that time and, I kind of have a unique personality compared to most ultra runners in terms of I'm not necessarily a type A. I'm more of a wild ass creative. And there's some people that love me and some people that hate me. And this one dude named Bill Terlecki, he kind of embraced me and he said, hey, I'll do your first with you. And he flew out and he did the race with me. So it was a great experience, right? It's like my first exposure to the ultra running community, which is, unmatched, I feel like in sport. And the experience and the course, everything was awesome. I was then now hooked on ultras.
And then from the 50K?
50K, I decided I was going to do my first fundraising event. Tried to raise money for a bunch of people to have a Thanksgiving at the church where my wife at the time attended. And so I ran Mountain Masochist, David Horton's race, Mountain Masochist.
It's a tough
one. And yeah, it was very tough. In fact, I DNF'd. It was my first DNF. I didn't quit on my own. I was pulled at mile 40 after, I don't know if you know the course, but they have this kind of loop at like mile 40. And I timed out at that loop and was bussed back. And that was a very humbling thing for me because I was trying to raise money. I'd been talking about it forever that I was doing it. But it was also my first recognition that, bro, you got to train. Like you can't you can't just keep doing these things and not train significantly and lose weight. And, once you start getting into these longer events, man, the effect on the body is just tremendous. And that's what happened to me is I had no intelligence for it. I went out way too hard. And you can do that at the marathon and even at the 50K. 50K is not much farther than marathon. But when you're going 50 miles, dude, like you have to manage your body. You have to manage your pace. You can't go out there and you can't especially a race like that has significant cutoff times and pretty fast cutoff times in the early part of the race. I just wasn't ready, but it was an eye opener for me and a learning experience. And I went on to do a lot of really great events that I did finish. So
yeah. You know what they say, especially for the 100-miler, you start the race in the best shape of your life and you finish in the worst shape of your life because it does, you just eats your body up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Highly recommended, actually. It's very distilling.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So, so you start evolving, you start doing more and more long distance things. But one thing that I have seen very consistent with you since I've met you is you're really, really focused on doing charity events and helping others. And I think this is something that came across in spades watching the selection. And so I'd like to tell everybody a little bit about the selection. The selection was a show, I think it was 2017, 16 or 17.
It aired in 2017. We went through it in 2016.
Yeah. And the selection was essentially putting 30 civilians through essentially SEAL training and seeing how they do. And you quickly, in my eyes, stood out as somebody that was not there just for yourself, but quickly it seemed like you were motivated heavily by your ability to help the others in that group. And that was recognized by the people that were beating the shit out of you guys. I want to know more about this. I remember when they sent the email out to the ultra running community to apply for this new show and didn't have too much. And I applied for it. And after watching the show, I'm so grateful that I did not get picked because it looked, I wouldn't have made it very far at all. It
was horrible.
It looked horrible. Tell me about the thing. I mean, how did you feel when you found out that you got picked?
Well, when I got picked, the process was really long. Like you go through a ton of interviews. You interview with the casting company, and then they make recommendations back to the network, and then you have to interview with the network. Because obviously they want to make sure it's going to be good TV. Because and that's a big part of why they choose people. So I think that I was chosen because number one, I was older. I was the oldest guy on the show. I think that I was also picked because I lived in Nicaragua at the time and kind of had this unique story from a professional perspective. And then, obviously from the personal perspective, I'm pretty outspoken about sexual abuse that happened to me as a kid, both by men and women. And I think that using that as sort of my platform and a way to try to communicate, especially with other men, right? As other men, we don't like to talk about that. If another man had sex with us and, we don't identify ourselves as being gay, then there's fear that comes with that. And I don't, right? I don't identify myself with being gay, but I certainly clearly had gay experiences, outside of my control, which really messed with my head for a really long time, because, if I can be frank in the interview,
of course you can.
Every gay experience that happened to me, I had an orgasm. So because of that, it really messed with my head because I was like, well, wow, did I enjoy this? Like, why did this happen? And why did I respond this way? And, at the time I'm 14 years old. So, I don't have a lot of frame of reference at that point. Right.
Yeah. You're at the height of discovery.
And unfortunately those experiences, play through your entire life. And, what I like to say about sexual abuse is, unfortunately, when it happens to you, it's the first thing you think about every day of your life. It's pretty much the last thing you think about at night. And there are triggers throughout any normal day that make you think about it more. So it's something that never leaves you. And, it requires tremendous amounts of therapy, at least it does for me. Not only just to get over what happened to me, but to manage the behaviors that I've developed because of some of this that I never addressed early enough. So they've become entrenched in me. And so I say to everybody, I need therapy for the rest of my life, right? But I'm okay with that. I think it's healthy. I think just like one thing that I've never really understood is how you could go to the gym, bust out a killer workout, put that shit on Facebook. Everybody's like, "Oh, dude, beast, man, you crushed it, you killed it." And then you could say, "Yeah, now I'm going to head to therapy and get a good head workout." And you get people look at you that side eye. Yeah. Like, "Oh, what's wrong with him?" "Oh, why you gotta go?" And that stigma needs to change. Like,
don't you think it is changing a little bit? It seems like
I think it is now.
Yeah. It seems like it's now almost like a point of pride. Like, yeah, I got a guy or a gal. I go once a week, and I just recently started going for the first time in my life. It took me a long time with a lot of prodding from my wife to go. I can deal with everything on my own. I can deal with whatever happened to me isn't important. People have had real trauma, like what happened to you, and everyone minimizes. I don't need this. I'm tough enough, especially in our community. We're all tough, I don't need any of that.
Right.
So I think it's, it's got to be, it's got to be part of your healing process, I imagine. And I really do appreciate that you do talk about it. I'm sure the vast majority of people that go through this have to hold that struggle inside sometimes for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And so kind of back to your original question of what I felt like when I was accepted, certainly I saw it as an opportunity to spread my message at a very high level, if given that opportunity. And I knew that the only way I was going to be given that opportunity was if I could complete this. So it was really important to me that, that I was dedicated to completing it. And then, of course, if you've seen the show, but my grandfather was Special Forces, Air Force.
Tell us about your grandfather. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so he was my mentor, right? Like, my mom had me when she's 16, and she was a mess, and she's a drug addict, alcoholic, one of my abusers. So I didn't have much of a relationship there. But my grandfather took me under his wing. I mean, he was like my dad, and I just really looked up to him, right? He flew P-51s in World War II. He was part of General Chennault's Flying Tiger Unit. He just a badass, right? Total badass. Tons of humility, though. Would never talk about it. You'd never know it, right? Like, you'd never know it unless you really knew him well, or went with him on at 5 a.m. to the mall to sit with the rest of his military buddies and drink coffee. And, he was Army Air Corps, and some of them might have been Navy, and they'll just like, Army sucks, no, Navy sucks. And, they do all that old school shit, but it was super cool. And, he was always my greatest mentor. He tried to teach me care, didn't necessarily embrace it early on. But he taught me about computers. He had me building computers when I was 11 years old, because he was a self-taught engineer. And that's really why I'm in technology today, is because of his influence. And unfortunately, he died when I was running across the country. But yeah, he's a big part of my life. And so for me to do that show, and I think it's important to mention this as well, is a big part of me wanting to do that show is because he always kept me away from the military. I moved to Hawaii when I graduated from college, and I was going to join the Coast Guard, and I took the ASVAB and did really well. I was going to walk right into officer candidate school. And I remember calling him up, being really excited about it and thinking he would be, and he just was silent. And then he finally said, "I don't think you should do that." And I was shocked, and I was like, "Well, why?" And he said, all your life you've been more of a creative. You've gone to school for business, gone to school for marketing. I think it's right up your alley. I think you'll do really well in business. But in the military, there's no bullshit. And he was coming to it from his own frame of reference from it, but he was still right in that he's like, you don't like to be told what to do. Just military is very, very strict. You do what they want you to do when they want you to do it. And I don't know that that's going to fit well for you. And he said, I would please ask you to reconsider.
Wow.
And I did. And because of his influence in me, but I've always had this sort of what I call military envy, or desire to know what I could have done, like what good could I have done had I been in there? And this gave me an opportunity to see if I could have gotten through the training, right? See if I was of the caliber to do it. And I know that it's not one-to-one, but it was some way for me to honor him, to try to know and understand a little bit about what he went through to be at the elite status that he was in, as well as, could I be that mentally and physically tough to get through it,
Wow. It sounds like an amazing mentor. Amazing person.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you, I would imagine you answered that question, because I obviously have never been through that, and I've only heard of people that have been through that, but it almost looks like what they put you through was even tougher. Now, I shouldn't say that not having a true reference, but where do you think what you went through was 11 days of hell? How do you think that coincides with what people do every day, going through this training and becoming the elite forces for this country?
Yeah, at least as the way the instructors explained it to us, is that we were getting an abbreviated version of what they went through. I think if you remember watching the show and you saw when they would put us in boxes,
Yeah, it's terrible.
We would be in there for the long, like I was in there for 6 hours with another man. So they had 2 people in one box. But, the instructors explained to us off camera that in their training, they were forced to stand there for 24 hours. Oh. So there would just be we got an abbreviated version of what they went through in a lot of ways. But then a lot of things we did exactly like they did. I don't know if you remember the pool scene where they tied our hands behind our back, tied our feet together, and we had to bob up and down. We had to, in essence, survive for 5 minutes without the ability to be mobile in the water, at least in terms of swimming or kicking or anything like that. We were really basically rocks, and we had to push ourselves, and learning all that's exactly what they had to do at the exact time intervals they had to do it. We had to tie knots underwater, with no gear. We had to go down there, tie the knots, get it approved by an instructor who, by the way, is wearing scuba gear. So he's taking his time. He's looking at your knot. He's like, meanwhile, you're down there going, and then he's finally like, oh, okay, it's good. And then you boom, take off, get back to the top of the water. But so, yeah, it was, as close that they could get. And that's why I really wanted to do the show. Because like you said, I did American Ninja Warrior. And a lot of people say, oh, you just didn't like Ninja Warrior because you didn't win it, because you failed. And as much as the selection, right? But it 2 totally different experiences. Ninja Warrior is very production based. They tried to call me Ninja Jesus, because at the time I had really long hair, the big long beard. They wanted me to take on this persona, or even had done the course. And then the whole thing is just so disorganized and chaotic. I was supposed to run at 11 o'clock at night. I didn't run until 5 a.m. So I just laid around on the concrete at Turner Field in Atlanta, waiting to run. It was very poorly done and very production driven. The selection was really cool because all the instructors are true, either veterans or active duty special forces guys. And they aren't about to cheapen their jobs, their role in the world. They're the integrity was off the charts, right?
Yes.
Production wasn't even allowed to talk to us. All these camera people around all the time. The only time they could ever talk to us is when they were trying to mic us or fix our mics or whatever. Because, we had mics 24/7 around our neck. And cameras everywhere, of course. And but they could never talk to us on the course ever. They could never. Only the instructors could. And the same thing, we weren't allowed to talk to them, or we'd get an integrity violation. So
they didn't even know your name for the majority of it. At least that's what it looked like. You were known as roster number 11.
Right, roster number 11. I mean, I think they knew our names just because they did part of the psychological game of it was they did a tremendous amount of research on us. So social media research, kind of to find out our personalities, where they could find it, because they're special forces trained. So especially the Green Beret guys, right? Like they're great at psychological stuff. They would know, where to chip away at us when we were at our weakest physically, so that they could break into us mentally. And so they knew our names, they knew our histories, they knew about us, but yeah, that's, I mean, just like they would do in traditional military to make you not a personality, you're just a just part of the machine. You know what I mean? You're just nothing but a brown T-shirt wearing number, like
Yeah.
everybody else. You're not special.
I watch that show and I know what it feels like when you're towards the end of 100 miler. I know how dark things can get in your head. And I was thinking that even the show probably couldn't even show the level of mental strength that you needed to have. I mean, when you guys are throwing sand all over yourself and then going out and rucking or running, all I could think about is the chafe and the kind, like, I felt like such a pussy. I'm like, I go run 100 miles and I'm crying at the end because my blisters hurt so bad. Or, people don't know that, like, when you pop a blister and try to put your sock back on, that 5 to 10 minutes of intense searing pain before it goes away. And I just thought about all the little stuff that we couldn't see that you guys were going through with something like that. And it really blew my head apart. I mean, it really did give me a lot of respect for the people that go through that training and live that life.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but my ass was on national television
I saw,
because
yeah.
yeah, we did those 1,000 sit-ups and they were spraying the sand. So, you do all your PTs done in this sand pit, you know, and, they would keep hosing us down while we were doing the sit-ups. So that wet sand would just grind into, oh, it was terrible. And so I had, just a thing like about that big on my ass that was just constantly, there was chafe, and it would, every time it would start to heal or scab up, we'd do more shit, get wet, whatever, the scab would come off. So the medic, and every now and then would have to come pull my pants down and, rub shit on my thing to keep it clean. Man, it was terrible. Embarrassing.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny moment in there. I was thinking, what can you do at that point? You're stripped so raw. I mean, think about it 100 sometimes when you come into an aid station, and you could care less if you're pulling down your pants and taking care of chafe in front of anybody because you don't care anymore. You're so
raw.
Right. A lot of people never.
I mean, you'd forget all about the cameras. Like you were so much suffering, so much internal thinking that you weren't even. I was very unaware of the cameras most of the time.
Yeah. So, well, I also want to let people know that series is still available. It's on Amazon Prime and it costs a couple bucks. But if you're into seeing people overcome adversity, that is a series that just you have to watch. And they never did another season, did they?
No, there's a falling out between the producers and A&E Networks, and who owns the History Channel.
Yeah.
So I believe that they took the concept somewhere else, and then they never did it again. And also I think the instructors had some say in that. I don't know for sure, but it would be really hard to like recreate that.
Yeah, because you know what to expect.
Yeah, everybody would know what to expect, and yeah, they could do necessarily other things or other missions, but once sort of that lid's been opened up, it'd be really hard. But I say that, and then the British version of the show called SAS, Whoso Dares or something like that, they actually got the idea from the British version of the show, and that's been running for 7 or 8 seasons. So
I didn't know.
I'm not sure really, but yeah, I mean, if you look at YouTube, all the episodes are on YouTube as well.
Cool.
For free. And but you got all these people trying to communicate with us in the comments, And you can just tell that like people really wanted another episode. And like if you look at the IMDb's and all of the reviews of the show, they were all extremely high. The ratings were really good. So I really a little bit of a loss of why they haven't kicked off a second one. But
it struck me as the most real reality show I had ever seen. And my wife said, you got to ask Christian. You see a lot of reality shows. You can read between the lines and go, this is bullshit. There's a lot of, like you said, for American Warrior,
American Ninja Warrior.
American Ninja Warriors, you can tell there's some BS there that they're doing exactly what you said they were doing. But this show didn't look like that. And she wanted me to ask you, she's like, I mean, you answered most of it by telling me that you weren't even allowed to talk with the production crew at all. But it was let's say it this way. When you went back and watched it, how well did it capture your experience?
Perfectly.
Cool.
If anything, one thing that I think the only thing that it didn't capture, and I'm not trying to throw the instructors under the bus here because I agree with them 100%, but they were very, what would I say? Accepting, is that the right word? They were okay with people quitting on camera. Like when the cameras were there, they would, they'd say, oh, you did a great job. I know you gave it your best. I know you tried, whatever. That wasn't my experience. My experience was more, you quit? All right, bye.
You dead to me kind of thing.
You dead to me. Right. Yeah. Like there was definitely I don't know how to explain it. It was like if you stayed in the game, you were earning their respect, and you could tell. And
was that a big motivator? I mean, you're looking at these people that have been through this, and they're putting you through hell. You want to please those people, don't you?
You do.
You want to get their respect.
A big motivator. Through one evolution they put us through one time. It was really brutal. It was a series of different exercises we had to do. We had to do it within a certain period of time, or we were going to get thrown out. And I remember running down the mountain at the very end of it, and one of the instructors was walking by, and he had like a cup of coffee or something, and it was getting near dark, and I'm running down the mountain. He goes, well, he goes, how you hanging in there, old man, or something. He goes, we could go over to the hotel right now. I'll buy you a steak, some French fries. You'd be in that hotel room. All you got to do is quit, man. We'll have a cocktail together. You just quit. You're 48 or 45 years old. You don't want to put yourself through this, man. Just quit. We'll go have a cocktail. He's just, and I'm like, no chance. Yeah. And I would just say, no chance. And he'd just laugh and he'd go, I knew it. We're not going to break you. And just kind of setting that expectation made me want to live up to it. It did. There was no way I was quitting, like no matter what. If they would have come to me and told me we're performance dropping you, I would have said, I'm sorry, you're going to have law enforcement take me off of this set. I will not on my own accord walk off of this.
You, on camera, at least, you didn't seem to suffer the way some of the other people did. And is that just how much did your 100-mile experience help you with some of those dark mental places? I mean, were they similar to the darkness and the tough stuff you go through when you're running 100?
1,000%. I think that I was a very unique candidate for a number of reasons. One, being older, I have a deeper frame of reference for suffering. Some of the 20-something guys, they just didn't have enough life experience or were never put in a situation where deep suffering was part of their life yet. So when things got really hard, it was easy for them to quit. I think that's kind of the summary of it. But if I could use the different experiences to apply, definitely running 100 miles, and you know what it feels like when you're like at mile 60 and you're really in your head and physically you're done. Like you're just trying to figure out how you can now start to manage the clock. You know how much you can run versus walk, and what your interval process is going to be, and how you're going to handle. Oh, here comes a big incline. I'll walk this, I'll run down. You just start playing games in your head, and I think that really helped for me because it just allowed me to kind of step back and say, okay, I know the task at hand. How am I going to manage it, right? Under duress. And I had enough experience doing that where I didn't panic. Also, I have to give a lot of credit to an organization called GoRuck. I used to work at GoRuck, but also GoRuck puts on events that are patterned after Special Forces selection training. And so I learned a lot from the guys that run those events. I learned a lot working there. And I think the biggest thing that I learned was helping your buddy, helping the guy next to you is a great way to get through shit you're going through yourself. If you're going through something yourself and you're always looking inward and you're always feeling sorry for yourself, that just capitalizes on itself to the point where you just completely fail. But if you decide to turn your attentions toward the success of someone else, you really have the opportunity of both of you succeeding. And I think that was the biggest education part for me. I think in episode 2, when we were all freezing to death because they kept sending us into the ocean for 8 hours, me trying to tell other people, who were hyperventilating, right? They were because we were freezing. They were sending us into the Pacific.
Yeah, it was 50. They said it was 50 degrees, and you guys were just soaked all day long.
All day long, and they would never let us get dry or comfortable, right? The second that we started to look like we were getting dry or comfortable, hit the surf, and it was terrible. But, just kind of leaning into people and saying, hey, man, take a deep breath. It's not as cold as you think, but the more you breathe like this, you're going to continue to suffer more. If you could take some deep breaths, bring your body core temperature down, you're not going to start shivering. You're not going to need as much oxygen. You'll just relax. And I kept trying to do that to people. And I think that I helped a few people with that. And it obviously it helped take away my focus on my own pain, right? Like you'll notice I was the only one not shivering.
Yeah, it was a stark difference. It was a stark difference to see you taking these slow, deep breaths and then sharing with other people. They did show that on camera, like this is what you do. And I'm sure that helps people even more when they see that you're not just saying it, it's working for you. So it's possible to overcome this. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. I've only paced a couple times, and I noticed one of the pacing jobs that I did took a very long time. And I remember I started to get tired, and I couldn't even let that creep into my head because I wasn't there for me. I was there for the person I was pacing. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a totally different experience. And I guess watching it, I never thought about that. That makes a lot of sense that you have to focus your attention somewhere, don't you?
Yeah. Yep. Without a doubt. Yeah. Anywhere other than just yourself, I learned a lot of catchphrases through GoRuck and through some of just my experiences doing events or friendships with, especially Special Forces cadre or veterans that have become my friends. And, a lot of them, like it's not about you or it can always be worse. They're all things that really resonate with me when I'm doing things.
That old ultra expression.
Everything
it never always gets worse.
Yeah. Ann Tracen's thing. Yep.
I think about that
Ann
one.
Tracen came up with that. Yeah. Yep. And actually, when I finished the show, I went and ran one of her races because of that line and how that line was a big part of my, as I do things. Another one is everything is temporary, right? And that one helps me probably more than anything else. That no matter how bad something sucks, it's still temporary.
Yeah. Are you watching at the end of the show when the 4 of you finish? And just, I mean, honestly, I challenge anybody to watch through that series and not bawl their eyes out at the end when you guys discover it's finally over. And to see the camaraderie that you guys had with each other. Are you guys all still in touch with each other?
We
the
are not
the
as
other
much as
three?
we were there for like the first year. Ryan Kent, he's a pretty well known Spartan elite racer right now.
It's a
The one who
monster.
finished first. Yeah. Um, and then Cliff, who was a special operations firefighter in Palm Beach County. He's now since gone on to join the military, join the reserves, and he's now a Green Beret in training.
Wow.
Um, and then, of course, who I call Bubble Boy, but my gosh, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Number
18.
17. I mean,
Was it 18 or 19?
no, 19, but no, not 19. But anyway, he was the young kid from New York who'd never even seen the ocean before, and
It's amazing.
jumped out of a helicopter into the ocean. But he when I was running across the country, and I got to Pennsylvania, he was going to Penn State Law School, and he came and ran a day with me. So he ran 32 miles with me one day. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was awesome. So we have a text group, but we don't really chat all that much anymore. Everybody's lives have kind of gone in different directions. It's been 4 years,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
people grow and move on. But we definitely had a bond after that, and for a significant period of time after that. And
I bet.
every now and then, we email each other and still talk and stuff.
So, tell me a little bit about running across the country, because it's another ridiculous task. And I know it was another fundraiser that you did.
Mm-hmm.
And you ran from New York to San Francisco, right?
Yep.
And there's some pictures of you
Riverside
running
Park.
through snow and wet. I mean, just miserableness. Just took you 22 weeks.
Yeah, it took me 5 months. So however long that is. It started March 19th and finished August 22nd. And that was the plan all along. So I think that's, when people ask me about it, like what was the most difficult part about it, it was definitely sticking to that timeline, because it doesn't matter if you're hurting the next day. It's not like you can go, I ran 32 to 36 miles a day. So it's not like you can go, well, I'm going to skip today and I'll just double up tomorrow. You aren't running
Yeah.
72 miles in one day, to catch up, right? Like, and especially beat down like I was. So it was something that you had to stick to. And I think that for that long of a time of having to get up, it's one thing to run a 50K one day and then lick your wounds for a week after and then start training again. It's another to run 50K one day, get up the next day and run a 50K again, then get up and run a 50K again, then get up and run a 50K again, right? It's just the beat down on the body. First of all, was something I'd never experienced, not even 100 milers. It was so bad, right? Like, just so bad, so bad. But yeah.
How did you manage things like your calories or your feet or your knees, or the things that I imagine would, for a lot of people, get to the point where you're no longer physical able. I mean, you can be mentally tough. I mean, I always say there's a guy like David Goggins. I'm convinced that he could run himself to death. Like, he literally has a mind strong enough that he would run. If there was bone sticking out, he'd still be running. He's just has that mental ability. And at some point, you got to know when is when. But what kind of things did you experience, and how did you manage your calories and injuries and chafe and blisters, and just kind of beyond my comprehension? I mean, do you just get used to it? Does your body adapt at any point?
It really, it did. I like to say around 1,500 miles, it started to adapt. So about 1,500 miles in, the body kind of decides, okay, this is the new normal. This is just how this body exists on this earth now, is that it covers this much distance. So it kind of makes me think of Neanderthal man, right? Like, Neanderthal man probably came out having to cover huge distances to stay fed and, hunter-gatherer type stuff. And, the body just adapt to that, even though we weren't necessarily designed for it, right? It was a necessity. And I think that's what happened for me, is that while it was still very hard to do those distances every day after 1,500 miles, it stopped I stopped getting progressively more sore or more hurt. I attributed a lot to Altra shoes. I went through 12 pairs of Altras.
I just interviewed Brian Beckstead for the
Yeah, you
podcast.
told
It just
me.
came out. It was a great interview too. He's a great guy. Great shoes.
Yeah, great shoes. And, so I had 0 foot issues. I didn't have a
It's
single
amazing.
blister. I think there were a couple of times when I got a couple rub spots, a couple hop spots, but nothing that debilitated me. Um, I mostly had some issues with my knees, with my calves, and I had great PTs along the way that would donate their services and tape me up with like KT tape and stuff. Like anybody that says that stuff doesn't work, they have never had it properly applied.
Hmm.
Right? They saw maybe other people in a race with a bunch of KT tape on their like shoulder or something, and they went out and bought it and tried to apply it and said this didn't work. Right? No, at least for me, I'm an idiot. I need a real true PT to do that for me, right? And it made all the difference in the world. It would make situations where I couldn't run into situations where I could actually run and even run pain free.
It's wild.
So it's a beautiful thing, but it does require. I mean, there's a reason they have certification courses around these brands. Is because knowing how to apply it matters. And I
Yeah.
think that just your average runner doesn't understand that.
Yeah, I had that experience. I tried it, but I went the route that you said. I tried mimicking what I saw, and I didn't get that much out of it.
Yeah, no, it had to, for me, it had to come from a PT. From a calorie perspective, that wasn't really a problem. I was a bigger dude anyway. I'm a bigger runner anyway, so I carry a significant amount of body weight or body fat anyway. Probably like when I did that run, I was probably 16% body fat, which I wanted to be. I knew that that was going to be important for me in the long term because you can't eat enough calories. You can never stay in a glycolytic state, right? Like there's just no way to, you're going to be burning fat. And I lost a ton of weight on the run, as you'd expect.
I
So,
noticed that on the pictures. It's evident looking at the pictures, watching the progression. When you finish, I'm like, wow, he lost a lot of weight.
but I ate everything. I'd eat an entire box of Little Debbie oatmeal cakes. I would eat, I'd eat as much junk as I did nutrition. It was just I wasn't really concerned about the quality of the calories. I was just concerned boat loading them in. I'm lucky that I have an iron stomach, so I didn't have to worry about that kind of thing. I just had to worry about taking in enough and not bonking.
Yeah. How did you feel when you were done? I mean, do you almost get that sort of depression that like, okay, well, what do I do now? I mean, I know you've always got a million irons in the fire, but you finish an event like that and you finish it successfully. And then the next day life returns back to normal. I imagine to some, I mean, is there a little bit of psychological issues with that too?
Probably. What's the right word here? Probably my biggest regret about the run. And the most negative thing that has come out of the run would be the letdown after the run. I did a lot of talks. A lot of people came out and ran with me. I touched a ton of lives. I raised 300,000.
Wow.
A lot of fantastic things for other people, which was a big part of the goal. But also a big part of the goal, and the whole reason I decided to do this is because in my therapy, I had learned that I wanted to help other people, and I wanted to be able to use my sort of crazy events and stuff as a way to gain attention for those who have been sexually abused, as well as forgive those who have abused me, because intellectually I can understand the concept of forgiveness. And once you forgive people, it can be very freeing for yourself. You're not forgiving them for them, you're forgiving them for you.
Yeah.
And I understand that intellectually, but just like I have a trouble believing in God, like I just can't force myself to say I believe in all of that. It was the same thing with forgiveness. I don't know and didn't gain any forgiveness. And I think that that was a big disappointment for me. I kind of finished the run with a very self-centered, well, what was the point? I embarked on some past negative behaviors, which has resulted in me ruining my current relationship. Uh, it, it's like the letdown of finishing 100 miler times 25.
Yeah.
It's been rough on me, and that's only emotionally and mentally. Physically, it's tremendously rough on me. Took me out of the game for 2 years. I finally was able to have Achilles surgery after jumping through all the insurance hoops, only to find out that they denied my insurance because of the extreme nature of my event. Um, and I was an idiot to even mention it to my doctor, because that's how the insurance company found out. And then, of course, they're like, "Well, you did this to yourself." But I had to have Achilles surgery. It was 60% torn away from the
Oof.
bone, and because it took so long for me to get it diagnosed and get to a point where I could get surgery, the I had bone growth, which is called edema, that they had. So in my surgery, not only did they have to detach the Achilles, they had to shave the bone down, then reattach it. And this was all May of 2020. So, I almost had to really learn to walk again from May 2020. And I had just now started to really train again over the last, call it 2 months.
Yeah, you mentioned that right at the beginning when we were talking, with a twinkle in your eye, like, I'm back trading. It's like, so where are you at now?
I am. So I, sort of the path is that I first started back to CrossFit once I was able to take my boot off, and I did most or all of the workouts scaled, and I couldn't do any plyometrics. I couldn't jump rope, couldn't box jump, couldn't even really some of the Olympic lifting stuff where it requires a tremendously explosive stomp from the ground. I couldn't do that in the same ways. Um, Pretty much had to scale everything. I I have since obviously run in the workouts, but in the last month, I have been able to add in running, slow running, and then also can jump rope again and can now box jump again, but I have to step down. I can't bound off of the box.
Mm.
And then as it applies to endurance sports, I started cycling a lot, which is really helping. I signed up for the C2C race across Florida, which is an adventure race across Florida, which I'll do in February. And that really got me mentally focused on getting my shit together. So then I started running, and I ran my first mile maybe a month and a half ago. Then I ran my first obstacle course race again. It was a 4 mile obstacle course race on the beach, and I did okay. Recovery was tough from that. Like, I could really feel my Achilles, but on Thanksgiving, I ran my first 5K. It was a trail race. Got that done in 25 minutes and took home the
Nice.
trophy for the 50-year-olds.
Yeah, it's a
So
good
that was
time.
cool. And then just Sunday, this past Sunday, I ran the Guana 12K, which was a trail race, a 12-kilometer trail race, or about 7.5 miles, in 105. So it felt very good. It ran in the eights. And, so I'm slowly but surely coming back. My goals are very much like my previous goals were, but I really want to take the knowledge and education and experience, knowledge index that I have, and help other masters athletes as they try to improve their life, whether they want to be true athletes or whether they just want to be stronger, fitter, happier, more productive in the second stage of their life.
How do people participate in that? Do you have a website set up for that yet, or any way that they can? Are you ready to advertise that and let people jump in?
So I am going through physiology training, and I am working to the right, because I'd like to create, I'd like to have the opportunity of testing people. testing athletes to help them learn about their everything from like their physical limitations like VO2 max and resting heart rate, resting metabolic heart rate, and all of these various things that so they can understand a true picture of what they're capable of first, right? I feel like it's very irresponsible for people to just start training someone without knowing these things. I'm gaining the knowledge and acquiring the gear to do that. And then that's going to be sort of the stepping stone to me beginning to help people and coach people.
That's cool. I'm sure you're going to be successful at it. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think right now,
Thanks,
especially
but like
in this time of COVID, I think people getting healthier and getting stronger and building their immune system and putting more emphasis on their health is extremely timely. We're having some internet.
I agree. I saw a meme the other day on Facebook the other day that I thought was very applicable to what you just said. But it's like, they're saying all these things to us about how to avoid getting COVID and everything, but nothing that anyone ever talks about is, staying healthy, staying fit, not giving up your exercise. Yeah, you might not be able to go to a gym, but there's nothing to stop you from, doing sit-ups and pull-ups and running outside and, doing all these various things to keep yourself healthy so that I realize that being healthy doesn't prevent you from getting a virus, but it certainly can contribute to how you deal with it should you get the virus and how intensely the symptoms can affect you. And I think that health and fitness should be a big part of that discussion or part of that COVID discussion as well. And it's really not,
it's really a lost opportunity for people in this country. Something as simple as getting enough sleep, how it affects your immune system and how maybe drinking a little bit less and eating a little bit healthier, even to a small degree, can have hopefully a big impact on minimizing the impact if you do get sick. And it's not just COVID, it's the flu, it's anything along those lines. And it's not in the common talking points at all. And it's a shame. It's a lost opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So for the websites that you do have up, why don't you tell people like what's the best way to see some of the things or help you raise some money for some? I know you're still raising money with runtoheal.org, right?
Mm-hmm. Run to Heal. That's RUN, the number 2, and then Heal, HEAL. Runtoheal.org. Really showcases my story, why I ran across the country. Lots of pictures of as I ran through the desert. As I ran through the desert in the Northeast and some of those really cold pictures that you had mentioned, because that first month and a half for me almost made me quit. Like it was the worst, nails in my shoes to keep me from slipping on the ice, running at elevations where they didn't have snow equipment. So, you just had to, most people were hunkered down their houses until it was all done, but I'm out there, trotting down the street. It was just terrible. Like you run through places like New Jersey where already people aren't used to seeing pedestrians. And they're certainly not kind to pedestrians. And then when you add snow, and then these snow plows push the snow into the shoulder of the road, you have nowhere to run but in the road, facing traffic. So you're getting honked and flipped off and stuff. Unless, now this was interesting, everybody seemed to hate me until I was doing radio interviews on and then all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, because they can hear me on the radio. And, the announcer's talking to me while I'm running, right? Like while I'm running, he's talking to me. And so, when people are spotting me when they're hearing that, then they're nice, it's like, it's just so funny, what you learn about like people, it's funny. I'll tell you another really interesting story is, I was running again through Pennsylvania, and a flag had fallen over. Just one of those little flags, that people put on gravestones or whatever. And I picked that flag up and put it in the back of my Camelback, and I'm running with it. And all of a sudden, it was like night and day. Every single car that passed me, they honked, they waved. Some pulled over and gave me donation money.
Wow.
One saw me in the newspaper. They had their kids in the back of the car, and they wanted to to be an example for their kids, right? So they pulled over, talked to me a little bit about my story, handed me cash out the window as a donation, while I'm running. It's like, it was the craziest thing. But it was just amazing how some of these little things, like the flag, the flag resonates with so many people.
Sure does.
It was such a great, it's so important, like raising money. As anybody who ever wants to embark on this, my advice to them is get really comfortable with the fact that it's incredibly hard to raise money. And it's incredibly hard to ask for money. And even people who will commit to helping you will fail you. Like, it just happens, right? Like, it is what it is. Not necessarily because they intended to, but maybe they bit off more than they could do, or but the things in their life just made it so they couldn't. But it's a really hard thing to do. And anything that you can do to get attention, don't be afraid, right? Like, don't be afraid to do whatever it takes so that people are paying attention to you, because ultimately, if your goal is to raise money, you got to raise money. And just that never works. It just doesn't. You got to resonate with people in 500 different ways.
Yeah. Well, you seem to be the master of it, man. And I mean, one thing that is just universally true is that if you're willing to be vulnerable and to be honest and open, like you sharing your story, there is nothing that resonates more deeply with us as human beings. And if you're courageous enough to be as vulnerable as you have been, good things come out of it. And so, what you're doing and the work that you've done and the selflessness, it's obvious. And it's a huge part of the character. It's very inspirational to me. And I know it's inspirational to a lot of people. And man, I hope you just keep doing what you're doing, because you inspire the hell out of a lot of people. You really do.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and taking your time and again, being so honest and open about your story. I think this is one people are going to want to listen to. And man, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. I love the opportunity to talk about it. So you're welcome.
All right, man. Well, let's keep in touch, and hopefully both of us will get a little bit more in running, and someday we'll run a race together. I would really enjoy that.
Count on it, man. All you got to do is ask. I feel like by 2021, I'm going to be ready to get back in the scene. So, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I hope you're running. Right, I hope I run into you soon, man. Thanks again.